Yes, the city may well be famous for its winter sports, but today seems more about water sports. It's a man-made island created for the 1967 Expo here in Montreal, and it sits in the St. Lawrence Seaway. The bumpy, narrow, barrier-lined track has caused many to shed a tear here too. And the wet track should simply make this one of the best races of the year. This is normally a very exciting race, it has to be said. There is the track layout, 2.7 miles and 14 turns. The DRS, if they're allowed to use it in the race, you're not allowed to operate that rear wing with wet tyres on, unless a few drivers go out on slick tyres. They will then enable it, and they're doing a good job of it out there, and everybody can use it. It's quite a challenge for them, though. We'll get into that during the race, as it is to keep their KERS system, this extra energy boost that they collect under braking. It's quite hard to do in wet track conditions because it dramatically affects the way that the cars slow down. A big crowd here, as always, and they're in on Thursday, Friday, Saturday and Sunday. They love Formula One here in North America, or this part of North America anyway, and hopefully we can put on a very good show for them, as we do hope we can put on a great show for you at home. And welcome to everybody around the world that tunes in to the BBC commentary. And there you see confirmation, and my heart drops a little bit. I'm saddened by that. The race will start behind the safety car. David, is that right?
Well, given the amount of incidents we've seen here with dry starts, a very short run into that first tight left-hand corner, then I think it's a view that's been taken to enable every car to be able to make a start. Of course, with the safety car start, the chances are the cars will be strung out when they eventually release them, and that'll make it a little bit safer through that first two corners. So I think the view there from the race director is we simply don't know how slippy this track is in wet conditions, and we don't want to risk losing a bunch of cars early on.
Yeah, but these are the finest drivers in the world, and I think they're ready to cope with these conditions. Safety car start means everybody has to be on the full wet tyre, so that makes the decision for everybody, doesn't it? And you can't go out there on... The FIA said a few years back, look, if you want to start behind the safety car, it must be extremely wet. You must put the extreme wets on. Felipe Massa doing a fine job for Ferrari in third place. So therefore, the DRS, this opening rear wing, like a little shutter that comes open and gives them higher top speed on the long straights of this Montreal, the Gilles Villeneuve circuit, that is disabled at this time. So normally it would come in at the end of lap 2. At the moment, it won't come in until the race director deems the track safe enough to use it. So now those wet tyres are on, they're pressured up, they're temperatured up to 60 degrees centigrade, as I told you, down on the grid, and the red lights are used as a countdown now to the start procedure. Vettel starts on pole from Fernando Alonso, Felipe Massa third, Mark Webber fourth, so Red Bull, Ferrari, Ferrari, Red Bull at the front of the grid. Hamilton and Rosberg fifth and sixth, Button seventh, Schumacher eighth, so McLaren and Mercedes-Benz line astern 2x2 there. Heidfeld and Petrov, the two Renaults side by side. Paul Di Resta for Force India 11th. Maldonado doing a very good job yesterday for Williams in 12th. Kobayashi 13th, spectacular he was. 14th Sutil, 15th Buemi. Difficult day for Rubens Barrichello in 16th. For Williams, De La Rosa 17th, and of course standing in for Sergio Perez, who had that accident in Monaco 2 weeks ago and is not racing today. Timo Glock 21st, Katakine 22nd, D'Ambrosio didn't make the 107% rule, but the stewards decided that he'd done sufficiently quick laps through the weekend and in previous Grand Prix, and they had to repair the car. Any number of reasons, and 3 in total they came up with to say he can start the race. And well, we've got a 107% rule, David. If we don't apply it, what's the point in having it?
Well, I think it's to protect, really, at the beginning of the season when you have new teams coming in, and you really don't know whether they're up to scratch or not. We've certainly seen in the past, in the history of Formula One, cars that have taken the start of a Grand Prix that really had no place to be there. But I think that in this case it's a sensible decision. Virgin have clearly been within the 107% rule at many of the Grand Prix already this year, and D'Ambrosio has shown himself to be more than capable.
I agree with you. I would have, if I was a steward, I would have let him in, because I think they've shown it is to stop the people that are miles off the pace, like Hispania were back in Australia. So Al Jaswari starts at the end of the pit lane, and he will be sitting there an awful long time, won't he? He's put a full wet setup on the car, but he'll be starting at the back, and at least with a safety car situation. And of course the race starts now. There is no formation lap. and that's why Al Dawsari will be able to just get onto the back of the field, but he will be sitting there a while those wet tyres lose crucial temperature. But I don't think too many of them. Somebody's very slow away at the back of the field. I think it's the other Virgin. I'm looking in the far distance.
Well, actually, this is working out not too bad for the Toro Rosso, because if this had been a normal grid start, of course, he's not allowed to leave the end of the pit lane until the last car.
We are going to start on extreme wets behind the safety car, but we're not expecting rain until 15 minutes into the race.
Okay, well, that information, first part, Michael knows that already. He understands the rules when it comes to safety car. And the second part sends a shiver down my spine, because I remember being in Grand Prix where I had messages from engineers saying, stay out, the radar tells us it's going to stop raining in 2.5 minutes. 10 minutes later, I'm dragging out of the gravel and the rain's heavier. Yes. You cannot accurately give information like that. I think that's misleading to the driver. You're better saying nothing than, if you were to say, we know it's raining 100 metres from the circuit because we've got a guy standing out there, his head's getting wet, then that's good information. But to give radar information based in 50 minutes, that's a bit dangerous.
So how quickly do you think there's a confirmation that the DRS, the rear wing for higher straight line speeds, is disabled at this point because they're all on wet tyres? That's part of the rules. How quickly would you bring that safety car in?
I think pretty much at the end of this first complete lap.
Me too.
I think the drivers, this is really good for them to get a sighter. They see where the standing water is. This track will dry out pretty quickly when you've got all of those cars running at speed.
Yeah.
And they'll be sucking the water literally out of the tarmac and chucking it up into the air.
I started a race in Brands Hatch last weekend with my son in some Radical V8s, and it was much wetter than that. Couldn't see where we were going, but we were still going for it. I personally think the race should have started properly, but that's my view, and I'm not sitting out there.
If I can just take the time to finish my sentence on the Toro Rosso, if they'd had to start from a normal grid start, he would have had to wait until the last car passes the end, or the start-finish line, the end of the pit lane, before he would then be able to join the race. Of course, now he's able to run round right with the pack, and technically, as soon as he goes across the start-finish line, he can make a pass into turn one. So, double good decision from Toro Rosso, potentially.
Yep. And we saw Alonso then trying the outside line of turn two, the karting line, some would call it, where there tends to be more grip, because where the rubber is laid on the racing line,